Hi, this is Aaron from Inside the Skev. I hope you enjoy this next episode. If you want to listen live, tune in Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. to WCGO. That's 95.9 FM, 1590 AM, or WCGOradio.com. Facebook Live at WCGO's page and Inside the Skev. To learn more about this great town and what I do, go to skevinston.com, and you could always contact me at aaron@skevinston.com. Now sit back and listen to this one message from one of our supporters, and we'll start the show.
Reading, writing, and math are a struggle for a lot of students. At BrainLinks, we know those skills are what paves the way to independence and success. Our specialists will help your child develop the habits they need to make sure they thrive not only in class, but out in the world in general. And of course, for everyone's safety, our lessons are done completely online. For more information on our team members and to schedule your initial consultation, visit brainlinksacademics.com. That's brainlinksacademics.com.
Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today, I am joined by Marcy Larson, and Marcy is the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development for the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center right here in Skokie. Ms. Larson, she brings 25 years of marketing, consulting, and research experience to this position. And we're going to be discussing many things during this conversation, including the background of the museum, current events that have been going on, the importance of the museum in relation to that, and just the greater need to educate the public and share facts and information about what happened and how to give people the tools to be able to stand up. And, we're having this conversation the day before Martin Luther King Day, somebody who was a great hero and leader for people who stood up for something that was right. And it's really an honor to speak with you, Marcy, to continue this great positive mission of the museum, especially during this time. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Aaron. Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And, it's been great partnering with the museum right now to promote the YPC Trivia Night that's going to be coming up this week, which is a great fundraiser for the museum. It's going to be about pop culture, and we'll talk a little bit about that more so. But I really feel like it's an unbelievable privilege for me to be able to help share the message of the museum with the greater community. And, I did have Susan Abrams on a couple of years ago, and at that time I wasn't as involved with the museum. But since then I have been, and I feel like it's such a great thing to be able to do. And I'm so thrilled that it's right here in Skokie. Now, if you could tell us a little bit about your role at the museum and how did you get involved?
Yeah, my role at the museum is threefold. One is marketing communications. Two is front of the house. The visitor services team reports in through me, and we've got a great team there and many, many volunteers, in the hundreds, in fact. And then looking for additional ways for us to create revenue. And that also includes group tours and facility rentals. So really, in a nutshell, any way we get the word out or any way that we can drive revenue that doesn't relate to students and field trips probably falls under me.
Yeah, and that I'm sure that's really forced you into a very creative way of thinking, especially given the year that we've experienced. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But, how'd you get into this field in the first place?
So I grew up in a traditional marketer. I have an MBA. I went to work for consumer products companies. I worked on Renews It and O'Cedar and Sara Lee and some of those bigger brands, American Express. And I say that's where I got kind of my best practices. But as I moved forward in my career, I just really wanted to dig in and get things done and be in a leaner, meaner organization. And so I worked for a number of mid-market companies, including two who were actually acquired. And after that second acquisition, I was looking for what comes next. And I really made a commitment to myself to work in an area that was more mission-based and where I could make an impact. And so the museum for me was the perfect fit. The mission resonated. It's a lean, mean, growing organization where we can turn on a dime and get things done. Yet I was able to use my best practices and my traditional consumer packaged goods knowledge and apply it in this environment.
Well, I think you've done a wonderful job. I mean, what you see, I mean, the museum is front and center. And I think that's the key for marketing, that it's on people's minds and people are aware of it and can interact with it and feel like they're a part of it. So kudos to you, I mean, really. And, for people who aren't as familiar with the history of the museum and why it's here in Skokie and why it is, can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. In the late 70s, there was a freedom of speech case that centered around Skokie, and it actually went to the Supreme Court. And what happened was neo-Nazis were trying to march in Skokie, and the survivors, of which there were many, many, fell just under attack, that they had left Eastern Europe and had lived through the Holocaust and did not want to live through that again. The ACLU got involved. It went to the Supreme Court. Ultimately, they found in favor of the neo-Nazis, but the survivors made enough of a stink is probably not the right words, but created enough awareness of what was going on that the neo-Nazis chose not to hold their march in Skokie and held it, in fact, instead downtown in Marquette Park. So fast forward, that became the genesis of this idea of creating a Holocaust museum. And so fast forward fundraising and, architecture and build and all that stuff. We opened about 12 years ago in a location in Skokie. And interestingly enough, we are the only Holocaust museum in the United States that is in a certain place for a certain reason. So we have a locational tie with our museum, and most other Holocaust museums don't have that.
Right, because you easily could have placed the museum in downtown Chicago, where the other museums are. But I think the fact that the symbolism of putting it in Skokie is so strong, and it's such a way to stand up to what those neo-Nazis were going to do here. And I had the privilege last year to interview Eli Adler, who's a filmmaker who made a film called Surviving Skokie. And it's all about the story of what had happened. So if anybody wants to really learn about that, the history, look up Surviving Skokie, and the interview is on skevinson.com. If you look under JCC interviews, I have a whole section there. But it's wonderful that it is here. And the architecture and design is also very symbolic, right? I mean, where you come into the dark and can you talk a little bit about that too?
Sure. Stanley Tigerman, who's a very renowned architect, designed the building. There's a lore story that says, we had all these architects proposing, and he came in and he drew an image on a napkin, and that was enough for the survivors to move forward. So, we're proud to have a building that, was done by such a respected architect. And yes, the building is symbolic. There's some symbolism built in throughout. So I would recommend anyone take our architecture tour if and when we reopen. And there is some resources online that could provide the architectural background as well. But the biggest piece of symbolism, which I'll talk about next, is that you do come in on the dark. You come into a dark period of time. As you go through the Holocaust exhibition, you'll find that it goes down, 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 down as the situation in Nazi Europe gets worse. And so, at the point of liberation, you start moving into the light side, and the exhibition starts coming up. And the exhibition ends on hope. It ends on people resettling throughout the world, and Israel and the United States, in establishing life and getting married and having children, and even comes to current day and ends with some thoughts about free speech and Holocaust education and what you can do as a visitor to help make the world a better place.
Yeah, it gives you those tools, which is so impactful. And I think right now, obviously, because of the stay-at-home order or advisory, the museum is closed to in-person. But if people want to learn more, go to ilholocaustmuseum.org, and there's information about events and different things going on there, and you could really kind of see the museum online for the time being. But how has the museum changed over the years? And the types of exhibits and things that you've done?
We're in our 12th year. I think we've been on a very accelerated growth angle. We now have a range of very interesting special exhibitions, probably up to 5 a year, where we explore social justice issues and go more in depth into Holocaust history. We host over 40 programs that allow people to come in and learn about social justice, about Holocaust history, about current events, immigration, and they range from book and authors to lectures to musical performances. They are at night and during the day. We have a lunch and learn program. So, that has been, the number and quality of programming has progressed. The number and quality of exhibitions has progressed. We also do really very extensive training. We have student leadership days from 5th grade through college. We do training for law enforcement. We do training for lawyers, judges, and teachers. So, we just, like I said, we're lean and mean and hungry and passionate. And, when we have good ideas, we just run with them. And I think you see that in the development of what the museum has to offer.
Yeah. And I love, what you've done in terms of the holograph exhibit, holograms where you can see this and speak with the survivors, which is so incredible. And I imagine just this year has accelerated everything in terms of what you do and digitally, right?
Yeah, I think we're coming, I'll just seed that a little bit. We have learned so much this year by having to operate what we call, quote unquote, a digital museum. And we have so much going on online. We started in March 13th of 2020 with a close order and saying, okay, wow, we're scared. We don't know what's coming, what's next. And we put a plan in place. And we've been, again, as true to our roots, as I talked about a minute ago, put one foot in front of the other and started creating plans and content and sharing. And I know we're coming up on a break, so maybe we can delve a little bit further into that.
Yes, we certainly can. And we will delve into that. And it's a great example for what other similar organizations can do and really learning how to adapt. So everyone stick around. We'll be right back with Marcy Larson from the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and stay tuned. Hi, I'm Aaron Masliansky, longtime Skokie and Evanston resident, host of Inside the Skev, and local real estate expert. As a community connector and realtor with Dreamtown Realty in downtown Evanston, I know firsthand what makes the Skev such an amazing place to live. When I'm helping my clients buy and sell properties inside of the Skev or out, I'm doing it with the best technology and support team behind me at Dreamtown. During the pandemic, I've been able to help my clients seamlessly stay on track with their home search, from immersive 3D Matterport tours, professional photos, to virtual open houses. My clients can find their homes safely and comfortably, and even from their couch. When you're ready to make a move, know that I'll be here to help. You can always find out more about me at skevinston.com/real estate. Again, that's skevinston.com/real estate, or email me at aaron@skevinston.com. Welcome back, everybody. This is Inside the Skev, and I'm speaking today with Marcy Larson from the Illinois Holocaust Museum. And just before we went to break, we were talking a little bit about how the museum has adapted to the pandemic. It's been challenging for everybody, but for a museum where you count on people to come inside and engage within your building, and then when you can't go into the building, it certainly shifts what the capabilities are. But I think what it's done is it's sparked a lot of creativity with the museum. And Marcy, could you expand on that and what you guys have done in order to shift during this time?
Yeah, I'll call it a journey. As I started to say before break, we closed on March 13th, and it was like, now what? We need to find a way to stay connected with our members and our broader community, and to let people know what we do and continue to activate on our mission. So we dug into our archives and did an assessment of the content that we had available, and we started off with 2 newsletters a week. One with long form content, one was short, and the long term content had 5-6 things that were an hour or more, and we kind of positioned that as an alternative to your streaming services. So if you want a little bit more educational content or in-depth content, we have that, and then the other one was more short snips. But so that was our first step, and then we started developing our own content. So how do we do what we normally do while we're closed? So a couple of examples of that. We started a Coffee with Conversation program Thursdays at 10 p.m. on Facebook Live. We got our survivors to tell their personal stories, the ones they would normally tell in the museum, to students and to guests on the weekends. And that's been incredibly successful, and that will continue even once we reopen. We also, our collections team filmed a virtual tour of the RBG exhibition. So while we were closed and people still wanted to learn about RBG, we had that available, and that was offered as a group tour. So say you're 20 friends, 30 friends, corporate alumni group, book club, whatever, wanted to do an event together while we were all locked down, they could do that through this Zoom group tour. And then we offered it to individuals through our website. So, and then we took all of our programming virtual. So we continued on with our 2 time a week, and sometimes even more programming. And what we learned was we have no geographic boundaries anymore.
Right.
And people were logging in to see our content, to see our programming from all over the country, and in some cases all over the world. So a fun fact, if you look at the number of people we have impacted virtually through all of 2020 versus who we would have impacted just in the museum, we had 50% more impact. Wow. Through this virtual activation. So pretty exciting. And, I think learning that we got to very quickly, which, we were set up to live stream our programming right before we closed, but I think we would have been testing and what do you live stream and what do you don't? And I think what we've learned is, having a virtual online option is never a bad thing. So that's really great learning for us, and has provided the opportunity to impact so many more people than we can through just our physical building.
That is pretty incredible. And just as a small example, for the trivia night, my team includes a bunch of my friends, and one of who lives in Los Angeles, another who lives in St. Paul, Minnesota, and other people in Chicago. But it doesn't matter where you live right now. You could be anywhere. And it really has increased the impact of the museum and all these organizations, because you could think outside of your physical constraints. Was one of the concerns, though, with, let's say, having Coffee with Survivors, of people adapting to using the technology of Zoom? Because that's always something like, are people going to be able to figure it out? But people have figured it out, right?
People have figured it out. I have to say kudos to some members of my team who do the tech checks with the survivors and have had to essentially teach them how to tell their story on Facebook Live. So we always do a tech check beforehand and walk them through the process. They're incredibly adaptive and, just always so committed to telling their stories because they know of the impact those stories can have, particularly in today's divisive environment.
Speaking of today's divisive environment, I mean, this country has been going through a lot lately. A week and a half ago, we had the attack on the Capitol. We're all nervous about what's going to happen with the inauguration this week. There's 25,000 troops in Washington, D.C. And we've seen a lot of symbolisms of anti-Semitism, racism that have been going on with that attack and just throughout the country. So what are some of the statistics that you've seen in terms of increases of these types of violent attacks or anti-Semitism?
Yeah, I mean, we know from a study that was done early in this year by Claims Conference that the amount of Holocaust knowledge that we'd like to see out there among Gen Zs and millennials is not where we want it to be. And we see from pictures like Camp Auschwitz at the Capitol building and statements that are being made by politicians with comparisons to Hitler, that there's work to be done. Our work will continue. Our commitment to educate will continue. And that, unfortunately, the world is not as tolerant and informed as we would like it to be. So we'll continue to march on and do the things we do and educate to create awareness, acceptance, and train people on, train police officers, train students, how to be leaders, how to take a stand, how to act in a more human way, recognizing the humanity in all of us.
Well, we're lucky to have the museum here that has the capability, like you do, to educate the public. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the programming that you have and some of the cutting-edge technology that the museum provides. So everyone's please stick around.
Recognized as the third largest Holocaust museum in the world, Illinois Holocaust Museum inspires people of all ages to take a stand against anti-Semitism, hatred, prejudice, and indifference. An award-winning and world-class attraction, the museum has a fantastic slate of engaging virtual programs, including discussions on social justice topics, film screenings with talkbacks, lunch and learn sessions with scholars, authors, and experts, and more. There's truly something for everyone. Tickets for virtual public tours of the blockbuster exhibit Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, are available now through February 20th. And speaking of inspiring pop culture icons, on January 21st, you and your friends have the opportunity to test your pop culture knowledge during the virtual event Take a Stand Trivia, hosted by the museum's Young Professional Committee. Thanks to Let Us Entertain You, this event can be transformed into a dinner party with food and cocktail kits available for curbside pickup in the city and suburbs. Visit ilholocaustmuseum.org for more information. Looking for safe and nurturing daycare or preschool for your child? Well, JCC Chicago is here for you. Introducing JCC Chicago Early Childhood's newest location at Beth Emmet Synagogue in Evanston for children 6 weeks to 5 years old. Contact Director Nicole Correa at jccchicago.org/tour for a virtual tour. Our nurturing educators and social services team create safe spaces for kids to develop social and emotional skills, including teamwork, independence, and empathy through classmate interaction. Our year-round outdoor classrooms provide abundant space to discover and nurture a lifelong love of learning. Full and half-day programs help children grow and flourish in their new classroom community. Schedule a virtual tour at jccchicago.org/tour to see why parents say they quickly notice the magic that happened day in and day out. And ask about the Hebrew Immersion Program. All the info's at jccchicago.org/tour. That's jccchicago.org/tour.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Inside the Scab, and we are speaking today with Marcy Larson from the Illinois Holocaust Museum. And we've been talking about, the importance of the museum and how the museum has shifted during this time. And the museum has been working on a lot of different types of programming in order to be able to really make sure that the public is engaged and, creating interesting ways to learn. And, one of the, I think, really cool things that you're doing right now is you're getting the survivors' testimony. Obviously, the Holocaust took place a while ago now, and we want to preserve the stories and be able to make sure that people are able to listen to them and understand them and pass it down from generation to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So tell us a little bit about this podcast that you're working on.
Sure. We know from research that the best way to create empathy and understanding is to hear from an individual, hear from a survivor. So that's what, every field trip that comes through our museum has a survivor speaker. That's what drove our push towards innovation and creating the Abe and Ida Cooper Survivor Stories Experience holographic theater, and the opportunity for our audience to ask questions of survivors and hear them answer it. So we are always looking for technology assists to tell survivor stories. As we look at as I looked at the rise of podcasts throughout, Spotify and Wondery and just people talking about podcasts, I had a burning desire to create a podcast series and was looking for a journalist to help. And interestingly enough, one of your journalists and sound engineers was someone who raised their hand, Andy Miles. So and Nancy has been a huge part of this as well, the producer on this show. So we've been working to record survivor stories over the last year. And we're coming to the end of getting those done. We have 9 podcasts with a range of survivors from different parts of Europe with different stories. And we'll be looking to finish those off, set up a website, and get them out on the podcast sites, in the near future. So that's just one more way we're using technology to tell survivor stories.
I think that there's something really wonderful about that, because when you're listening to a podcast, it's almost like it's like an intimate experience listening in on a conversation with somebody. And I think it, like you talked about empathy, and when you hear the story, you could have empathy for what somebody went through. And I can't wait to listen to these stories. And I am, really just thrilled to be a part of WCGO and working with Andy and Nancy, and so grateful that they're working on this project with you. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Yeah. We're ready to get them out there. So
yeah. And, talk a little bit about the hologram exhibit. I mean, that is really incredible, and it keeps getting better, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, it's from that nugget of empathy is best created and impact created through true survivor story, through one-to-one interaction with the survivor. And we know even those that were children in the Holocaust are in their late 80s and 90s, and they're not going to be with us forever. So that was the idea that led to this. So, how do we create a technology that allows people to interact with survivors when they're not here? And so years of research, years of partnership with USC Shoah Foundation, and then having survivors go and sit under a dome of lights and be asked thousands of questions. Each survivor that has done this has asked over 3,000 questions to create this essentially database that can be accessed through artificial intelligence. And so, we started with 7, and then we continue to add survivors to it. In our museum, there's an introductory film on each survivor, and that sets up the interaction from the audience. So, it's really cool technology. You do feel like you're having a conversation. Visitors forget that what's in front of them is a hologram and not a real person. It's really, really incredible, really moving. And we even won a Chicago Innovation Award for this technology a year ago. So I invite anyone who can get to the museum to experience this to please do when we reopen. That experience is open, and we're conducting it in a COVID safe way with social distancing and reduced capacity.
I really encourage people to go to this. I've gone to it a few times now and heard different survivors speak and ask questions. And you, like you said, you do forget that you are speaking to a hologram, because it is, pretty amazing. And you get to learn a lot about their experiences, which were so harrowing. And it's, a lot of these people before there was going to be the march in Skokie didn't speak out about, or they didn't want to share their stories. They didn't want to burden people with it or burden themselves with bringing up these horrible things that happened in the past. So the fact that these people were asked 3,000 questions and entered into a database and have become such vocal advocates of the museum and really the people who founded it is really remarkable, and just a testament to the survivors and what amazing people and resiliency they have.
Yeah. And, we've lost a couple of the survivors that are in the theater. Aaron Elster, who was a hidden child, lived in an attic for 2 years without a shower in shorts. And his story lives on. Eva Kaur, who was a founding member of Kendall's Museum, who was a Mengele twin, her story lives on. So, as I said, each of these stories is very unique, and we have many different stories to tell. We rotate them every month, so there's lots of opportunity to come back over and over and learn and hear a different story.
There really are. What are some of the other types of technologies that you're looking into in order to be able to continue to share stories?
Some museums are having really great success with virtual reality, and so we're exploring that as an opportunity. As we've learned from COVID, online is huge. So every exhibition that comes through, we are planning to do online virtual tours, both for group tours and public walk-in. We've just finished that option for our core Carcomi exhibition, and we have online virtual field trips for students and educators. We have a virtual teaching trunk program that is now virtual as well. So we are literally taking everything we do in the physical museum, and I think you used the word creativity earlier in this broadcast, creatively trying to and actually figuring out how to do that in an online way and get it out to a much broader audience than we could possibly reach, in Skokie, just outside Chicago, Illinois.
Right. And you have some really great programs that are coming up in 2021, like that I think will be very impactful. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We have a program for International Holocaust Remembrance Day called Renia's Diary. We talk about a little bit as the Polish Anne Frank. It was a young girl's diary it was recently discovered, and Renia did not survive, but her sister did, and she will be talking about the diary on January 26th. We have, let me go to my notes real quick. Another program coming up on February 4th, a lunch and learn on how a Montana mom became a leader in fighting anti-Semitism. She was a realtor who was working with a white nationalist's mother. And, when he found out she was Jewish, they blackballed her and did all kinds of things, and she sued and actually won. So that's February 4th at noon. And what I would really advise you to do would be to go to our website and go to our events page, and you can see the whole range of public programs. And I will say too, that though Notorious RBG has physically left our museum, the virtual tour is available through February 20th. So if you click on that events page, you'll see opportunities to take a virtual tour of the exhibition Notorious RBG.
That's pretty incredible. I am signed up for the February 4th speaker. It definitely resonates with me as a realtor and, being Jewish and wanting to learn how people combat anti-Semitism and how brave she must be in order to do what she's done there. So it's incredible how you guys have been able to shift and still be able to have different programming like this. You have programming that's going to be coming up about Nelson Mandela and Rise Up and about the Shanghai Jews as well, right?
Yeah. 2021 is an incredible year from an exhibition standpoint. We're opening Nelson Mandela's Struggle for Freedom that talks about the struggle against apartheid with Nelson Mandela as its central figure. We follow that in July, opening an exhibition called Shanghai, Haven from the Holocaust. Many people do not know that Jews escaped to Shanghai, and there was a ghetto in Shanghai full of Jewish refugees.
And we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Sorry. But everyone stick around. We'll hear more about these great programs, and then we'll go from there.
Mortgage rates have reached record lows recently. If you see homeownership in your future, the future is now. Think of Beth Lewis at Cross Country Mortgage as your personal mortgage shopper. She'll sort through racks and racks of home financing options until she finds exactly the right style and fit for you. She'll get you pre-approved to give you an advantage over other buyers, and she'll close your loan quickly with a highly efficient process driven by advanced mortgage technology. So far in 2020, Beth has come through for over 680 individuals and families who needed home financing. Beth will be here for you too, because helping people get mortgages is what she does best. Visit BethLewisTeam.com to get started. That's BethLewisTeam.com or call 847-274-9745. That's 847-274-9745. Cross Country Mortgage LLC, NMLS 3029, www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. Equal housing opportunity. Illinois Residential Mortgage Licensee.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Inside the Skev, and we're here with Marcy Larson from the Illinois Holocaust Museum. And we've been having a great conversation about the different ways that the museum has really adapted and had a lot of these things in place to go digital and expanded its reach beyond the borders of Illinois tremendously this year, which is really quite incredible and speaks to the resiliency of the museum and the mission involved here. So, one thing that we've got coming up, and we touched on this a little bit, is the Young Professional Committee Trivia Night that's coming up this week on January 21st. And it's going to be a trivia night about pop culture. People can sign up from anywhere, and it's a great way to support the museum. So, you were talking a little bit about how your team is actually spread out around the country, right?
Great. I have a team that is in LA, New York, Ann Arbor, and Chicago. So we're going to put our heads together and see if we can come up with the right upstanders that respond to the questions that our host, Jeff Conway, will be asking. So.
Yeah. And I've done a few, or actually I did one test round with the YPC board, and it was so much fun. So just make sure, don't look at Google, actually answer the questions, play it straight. But it's a ton of fun. And you can even order like a food package if you wanted to from Let Us Entertain You, and have it delivered or pick it up. So it's really like you're there for an event with all your friends.
Yeah. And can I just dive into a little bit more about the theme?
Absolutely.
So the museum's mission is to remember the past and transform the future. And one of the ways we do this is to connect the history and lessons of the Holocaust to current day. So we educate people about upstanders, those who are using their voices and choices to make a difference in the world. So this Take a Stand Trivia Night is about pop culture, but it's really focused on pop culture icons that do take a stand, pop culture icons that are upstanders. So like an RBG, like a Malala, like a Chance the Rapper. So it's such a great event that merges what we do and what we're about and what we stand for in a very fun and interesting way.
Yeah, that's it's different than other trivia nights that I've been involved in, because you are focusing on that. And I think what it does is it gets people to start to think in the frame of mind of those upstanders, and hopefully supports the mission while supporting the museum itself financially. How many people do you know have signed up already?
I think we're at well over 300 people. And I think, kudos to the committee, and Erin, you're one of them. There's great raffle prizes. It includes travel. It includes some cool kitchen stuff, some vintage accessories. So there's raffle tickets. We are partnering with Let Us Entertain You. So there's food and beverage packages that you can purchase. So you can do a virtual happy hour in addition to, or a dinner party, or however you want to do it with your team. But there's so many ways to enjoy this event. And the YPC, our Young Professionals Committee, has really built out this event to be fun, interesting, educational, and I can't say enough about how great it's going to be.
Yeah, I think that is great. And your big mission in many ways is obviously getting funds for the museum. And this is one way to engage the young professionals. And then you also have a big event coming up on Wednesday, March 10th for the Humanitarian Awards Dinner. And the keynote speaker is going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I think that's going to be a terrific event. And is that going to be virtual as well?
It's going to be virtual, a very small in-person component. I think, we're still watching the tea leaves a little bit to see how that's going to go. We are so excited to have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a speaker. His family has close ties to the Holocaust. He's published books. You want to talk about an upstander who has made a difference, who's used his voices and choices to make the world a better place. We're just have so much respect for him and so much, and they're so glad that he will be addressing our community. I think he's a perfect personification of what we stand for.
Yeah, and then Excelon is the humanitarian award winner, and as well as Scott Swanson and Zev and Shifra Karakomi are the Survivor Legacy Award winners. So it's really, I think it'll be a great night to support the museum as well. And I know that if you want more information, go to Illinois Holocaust Museum.org, and that's really the place to find out about all these different terrific events that are going on, and to sign up for the newsletter to get the latest information about when things are fully open and everything else. I mean, my God, my hope is that everybody is able to get vaccinated soon. This dreaded pandemic can end, and we can really get back in person, but then use the tools that we've learned. I mean, do you plan to do all these different things where there's physical and virtual components ongoing for perpetuity?
Absolutely. I mean, when we can reach 50% more people than we can reach in our building, and our mission is to educate and transform, absolutely, we will do that.
Yeah. And I mean, what have you found to be just some of the most exciting things that you've worked on while you've been here?
Oh, wow. I think every time an exhibition opens, I get excited. So I'm a marketer. Every new exhibition is a new product. So I get to talk about, figure out the communication, learn about the exhibition, develop the advertising, reach out to press. So I'm excited about Mandela. I was thrilled about RBG. It was really interesting to learn about the Lodz Ghetto. I'm learning more about the Shanghai Ghetto, and I'm challenged every time we have an exhibition to talk about it in a way that's engaging and interesting and get the word out. So every exhibition is really exciting to me.
Yeah. And just, I think the speakers that you bring in and the films that you've had in person, where I've learned so much about, how Japan saved many Jews in the Holocaust. And I didn't know that story. And just all the different things that you have going on. It's such an amazing place to, when you think that you knew everything about the Holocaust or how people have stood up for each other, go and go and learn more.
And the other thing I will say is it's an absolute honor to work with survivors day in, day out. They are extraordinary people with extraordinary stories, extraordinary resilience. And almost anyone that works at the museum will say that that's probably the best part of the job. I mean, you can't help but feel motivated and encouraged and, to go out there and want to do the best you can for the museum after you see them or have a conversation with them. So our founders continue to be our inspiration every day.
Well, on that note, I think that's a great way to end. And everyone, take care. Have a good week. And Marcy, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy Sunday, everyone.
Happy Sunday. Thanks for listening to this latest episode of Inside the Skev. To listen live, tune in Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. to WCGO. That's 95.9 FM, 1590 AM, WCGOradio.com, or you can go to Facebook Live on WCGO's page or Inside the Skev. If you want to learn more about this great neighborhood or what I do, go to skevinson.com. And I want to thank every supporter of the show and all my listeners. Thanks so much.